Everyone had to meet sooner or later. Naruto reluctantly chose the former, if only because it was the best option. To delay further would be folly, he knew. Cersei had no prevarications about Elia or Oberyn, having met both before with him and Jaime back when they were both young. Lyanna had not, knew neither of them, and was likewise very curious about their newest arrival and what her presence here in the keep meant. He certainly hadn't been avoiding her, no matter what one might say. Nope, not at all. Casterly Rock might be a large castle, but it was also his home. Safety, solitude, sanctuary, all those fancy words, but at the end of the day he felt secure here despite his issue with Cersei. He knew he could trust that his sister wouldn't betray him. Likewise, Lyanna and Elia, however highborn they might be, were his guests. He would treat them as such, respect them, but he wouldn't allow them to come to blows. Nor would he allow Cersei to dictate his pace. Time to put his foot down, as it were, and keep it down. He wasn't so foolish as to believe everyone would become fast friends from the first, mind you. This wasn't a fairy tale, this was life, and the road of life was brimming with all sorts of pitfalls and potholes. Few ever truly got along with one another immediately, but they needed to meet. Oberyn didn't concern him overmuch. He didn't seem the sort to stir up trouble on a whim. No, it was Lyanna meeting Elia that concerned him. He wasn't looking forward to it, so he opened with something he knew they would both adore. Dragons. Truth be told, he rather relished the squeals of surprise when the women saw Shukaku. Well, Lyanna and Cersei squealed. Elia had already met him, of course, having been present for his hatching. She merely crooked a dark brow his way and sat by Kurama, who in turn delighted in having his head scratched to his heart's content. There was no more secure place for a meeting than the stone garden after all. No one would or could follow them down here without his express permission. The scarce few that had tried were swiftly silenced and cast into the sea. Because wouldn't you know, his garden was also a useful place to dispose of bodies. Whatever Kurama and now Shukaku he supposed didn't eat, the tide would carry right out to sea, never to be seen again. Really, it was a win-win. Oi, Shukaku's indignant chirp brought him back to reality. Watch the scales, ladies, I'll bite. Naruto hid a snicker behind his hand. He certainly will. Shukaku flared his wings with an angry roar that emerged as a rather whiny, pathetic chirrup. Did you just laugh at me? I'll eat you alive. Kurama raised his long neck beside Elia and snorted, expelling a plume of smoke from his nostrils. Care to repeat that, runt? Shukaku met his glare for all of a moment, then wilted like a drooping flower. No fair, you're bigger. Poor thing. Cersei stroked his back, sensing his despondency. Seems he's the runt of the litter. Lyanna hummed her agreement as her direwolf pup gave Shukaku a curious sniff, which in turn had him bridling all over again. Enough. Elia clicked her tongue, admonishing them both. He is a noble and proud beast, you're crowding him. Smiling sweetly, she crooked a finger his way, beckoning. Why don't you come over here, dear one? So speaking, she held up a bit of meat before her face. You must be hungry. Shukaku's head snapped up. Now you're speaking my language, woman. Naruto bit his fist so damn hard to stifle a laugh as the brown and blue dragon scuttled Elia's way on unsteady legs. Once he reached her, she reached down to pick him up. Gently now, don't get yourself bitten, and set him upon her shoulder. She didn't flinch, even when he dug his claws into her for balance and began stroking his head. Remarkably, the surly Shukaku allowed it in exchange for being fed. See, Elia preened at Cersei and Lyanna wholly at her ease. You need only show him the proper respect. The latter scowled. How did you? I trained vipers as a girl. She offered another bit of meat to Shukaku, kept her fingers out of biting range as he scarfed it down, and began to stroke his scales once more. A dragon is more dangerous, yes, but you need only show them the proper respect, said Reborn. Biju huffed indignantly. That's right, you best respect. Oh, yes, that's the spoowat, Kurama scoffed. Whipped, buzz off, fox. Shukaku snapped his tiny jaws at him. She gives good head pats. Cersei tilted her head. It's almost like they're talking to one another. Naruto snorted into a sleeve to no avail. Some things never changed. So many lizards. Here at last, Oberyn said his piece as he turned a bemused look upon Shukaku. They'll be calling you the father of dragons at this rate. Kurama and Shukaku chirped their laughter, much to his chagrin. Heat rushed up the back of his neck. Please don't call me that. Shukaku snapped his agreement. Yeah, he ain't our old man. Say that again and I'll bite you like I did the brat. Despite their rocky start, Shukaku had tolerated Tyrion. He would have gone for the throat otherwise. Sometimes he wondered if the little bugger would have breathed wind bullets like his old form. Wouldn't that be a laugh? It almost made him smile. Right up until he remembered the other Biju. Kurama had been a miracle, Shukaku sheer luck. But both eggs had been sent his way by Melisandre, one directly and the other indirectly to be sure, but the fact remained. Bloody red woman. If the other 7 were out there, did she intend to find and funnel them his way as well? He hoped not. That was more company than he knew what to do with. 1 dragon was hard enough to hide, 2 was company, 3 was a crowd, but 9. He couldn't even fathom the concept of that dragons even if they were really tailed beasts under his command. It was madness. No, more than that, it was impossible. Surely that wouldn't happen, right? Right. Didn't dragons grow faster with company? His research said yes, but that they also grew faster with freedom. He'd given Kurama both, but maybe having Shukaku around would push him to grow fast. He hoped so. Sure, the Greyjoys could be handled without dragons, but a greater war loomed and they were running out of time. Shaking his head, he returned his focus to the matter at hand. With a less than subtle nudge from Cersei, Lyanna had turned to look upon Elia at long last, and now they were speaking. Belatedly, he caught the tail end of a conversation he'd missed. I've never met someone from Dorne before. Is it really as hot as they say? Elia tossed her head, flicking some dark hair out her eye. Hotter, better to be here than there. Something must have shone through her face, because Cersei took her hand in her own. You're pale. What's wrong? The son of that wicked lizard sought my hand in marriage. My hand. She shuddered, horribly repulsed. I had to flee, lest he return and array me away in the dead of night. We'd always planned to leave, but his presence in Dorne merely expedited our departure. The rest you already know. Oberyn laughed a little. You worry too much, sister. I still say it would have been a good match. Mother and father were quite cross with her for rebuking the dragon. Her face went gray at the mere mention of the city. My place is not there. It cannot be there. I will never be there. Elia's gaze met his as she spoke. She wanted to tell him something. He wasn't sure what. But it would have been a good match, Oberyn teased her still. Lyanna thumped his side and Cersei glared. What do you think, Nathaniel? He winced as Lyanna stared at him intently. As did Cersei. Elia, too. Why did he get the feeling they'd set a trap for him just now, and that he'd blundered blindly right into it? Still, they were awaiting his answer, and he gave the best one off the top of his head. I think you should follow your heart. For some reason that seemed to please all 3 of them. He wasn't wholly sure why. Wasn't he expected to choose between them? Bloody Lannister, Oberyn muttered under his breath. How is that you have 3 ladies longing for your loins? Naruto nearly choked on his spit, but the princeling of Dorne fared far worse. Errors were made, the ladies rounded on him. Now wait just a moment, you. How dare you say that? I saw him first. Naruto found himself releasing a breath as they fell into a squabble, yet no blades were drawn, no knives came out, had he been worried for nothing. A small yawn escaped him. Gods, he was so tired. Are you quite done laughing? Rayla didn't look away from the balcony. She knew who was approaching her, just as she knew he wouldn't make a fuss over the state of her room. She'd had the servant girls clean it most thoroughly. There was no sign of her hysterically giddy outburst. She could still feel all that youthful energy humming through her even now, begging for release. And yet, this one knew something. She should not be surprised, she huffed. Bloody Lannisters always poking their noses where they shouldn't. I haven't the foggiest idea what you mean. As you say, your grace. She craned her neck towards them. Sir Jaime. What brings you here? He stared at her for a moment, perhaps, struck by her youthfulness before recovering. Did you hear? He leaned against the wall. The king's lost an eye. It just fell right out his skull this morning. Plopped onto the floor like a rotten grape. Such a pity. Rayla squinted at Jaime. You're enjoying his suffering, aren't you? As are you. She tore her gaze away from his and looked back to King's Landing and Flea Bottom below. I know not what you mean. He sat on the railing of the balcony beside her, beaming. Let us be honest with ourselves, your grace. The realm will celebrate his death. Rayla bit her tongue for a moment, then sighed. I wish to sleep. Will you stay here and watch over me a while? Nathaniel's brother bowed. As your grace commands. A finger firmly tapped his forehead. Naruto ignored it with intent. They kept tapping away. He kept his eyes shut. Ignore, tap. Once he was certain the girls wouldn't murder each other or him. He'd snuck away and retired to his chambers for a mid-morning nap. He had questions for Rayla about the Greyjoy incursion, and intended to grill her about in his dreams. The better to ascertain whether or not Ares had a hand in this. It seemed a sound course of action. Tap, tap, it was not to be. Tap, 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 tap. Naruto blew out a breath and creaked an eye open. What is it? Much to his surprise, he found Nymeria looming over him. The faceless girl, a woman grown now, he reminded himself, stared back him with intent. She'd removed all of her faces, revealing herself to him in her true entirety, pale hair, scarred face and all. She kept staring for quite some time, and he let her, unwilling to spook her. At length, she found her voice. When it emerged, it was little more than a whisper. "A girl wishes to speak." Naruto tilted his head where he lay, quizzical. "Isn't that what we're doing right now?" Her brow furrowed furiously. "Okay, don't push it." "Not here." She crept to the door and he followed her. ... into the dark. How large is he now? It was, Tywin felt, a fair question. Hardly the sort one asked at dinner, to be sure. Meals were meant for more pleasant topics. Talk of family and weddings and heirs, not the size of an ever-growing dragon lurking below in the castle keep, but still a necessary inquiry nevertheless. Putting aside the matter of the other egg the Martell girl had brought, which may or may not hatch on them. And wouldn't that be just wonderful for all the worst reasons? They needed a sound plan of action going forward, or they were lost. They'd taken dinner together in his solar tonight, him and Nathaniel, just the two of them. Joanna and Cersei hadn't been best pleased by that, Tyrion even less so, but this was necessary. He would impress upon them the importance of the plan at a later date. For now it was of paramount importance that they came up with a battle plan, and soon. Ravens had flown quick and thick in the last day. The West looked to them for answers, for action. Commands they could give and had, but they needed action, and soon. The Ironborn were already reaving up and down the western coast. They would come to Lannisport soon. It was not merely a matter of if, but when. Crakehall had already fallen to them, and given enough time, they might penetrate through to Cornfield. Feastfires was also a potential target, being on the coast as it was. But if the Ironborn commander had a proper head on his shoulders, unlikely, but possible, he would seek to burn the fleet at Lannisport. Doing so would render them powerless to prevent further naval incursions, and thus cripple any response they might make. Their enemy might well have pulled it off and caught them unawares too, if not for the Elia Martell and her brother's timely warning. The Dornish were going to be smug about this for years to come, he knew, if not outright decades. Tywin supposed he would have to compensate them, or he'd never hear the end of it. The siblings' timing spoke of good fortune, but Tywin didn't believe in luck, not these days. Luck would have seen Aerys dead a decade ago on the Iron Throne. Luck was fickle. Sometimes it favored good men. Oftentimes it favored a darker sort. Perhaps luck was real, perhaps not, but he could not entrust his stratagems to luck. Even if it did, on occasion, swing in his favor. Hence the question about Kurama. Having a dragon burn the Greyjoy fleets over open water would simplify matters a great deal in the battles to come. With their ships burned, the enemy raiders would be trapped inland, with no escape, harassed from land and sky. Aegon the Conqueror had once done the same with another Ironborn at Harrenhal. It would be fitting to inflict the same fate on the Greyjoys in their towers at Pike. Flood all them with flame until wood burst and rock crumbled. Such would even put the reigns of Castamere to shame. Granted, it would expose Nathaniel's dragon to the world, but if he'd grown, not large enough. Nathaniel dashed his hopes as he polished off the last of his mutton with an annoyed sigh. Not for what you're thinking, maybe in a year. Tywin bit back a growl and downed the contents of his goblet. Water, not wine. They'd been here for some time. We don't have a year. No, they did not. If they waited, they had at best a month or two before the raiders would be on their doorstep. His heir grunted, sympathizing with him. I know. Do you believe the other egg will hatch? Nathaniel thumped the satchel he wore, which no doubt contained the item in question. I only take this off when I sleep. I'll be the first to know. They all but had 2 dragons and they couldn't use them. Blast it all. They ate in aggravated silence a moment more. Tywin took the opportunity to mull over his plans. Once upon a time, the Targaryens thought dragons would be their legacy. And perhaps they might have been, if not the dance of dragons. That civil war of theirs wasn't merely foolish, it was stupid. No, only did they dance away their birthright, but the means by which to keep the other kingdoms in line. They'd never recovered from the dance, while the other houses only grew stronger. None would have dared cross Aerys if he had a dragon. But now they had one, and in time the Mad King would burn, if they could only survive the Greyjoys. At length he deigned to share another tidbit of information with his son. I have written letters to the north, he said, noting the way his body perked up. Lord Rickard has responded. And, Nathaniel bit into a hunk of bread, tearing a chunk free with his teeth. What did he say? Tywin granted him a grim smile. He has promised us his support in the war to come. So soon? But of course. He unbent enough to take another bite of his own meal, chewed briskly, then swallowed before speaking once more. His only daughter dwells within this castle. It's only natural that he wishes to protect her. After a moment's pause, he chose to further amend what he'd said. That was wise of you bringing her here. Had you not done so, we might have found ourselves pressed. His boy barked a laugh, bitterly bemused. Ha! She was the one who wanted to come to Casterly Rock. You act like I had a choice in the matter. Nevertheless, you did well to woo her over to our side. Thanks to that, we've won over the North. Nathaniel's smile died an ugly death. That wasn't the reason I fell in love. I know. Tywin held up a hand to temporize. You care for her and she clearly cares for you. She's one of the few brave souls actually willing to talk back to me. And curse at him, too. She'd been most vocal when she learned what the Ironborn were up to, demanding he write to her father for aid. Her exact words had been to rip those rat bastards out of their towers. That alone warrants my consideration. Here, he pushed a heavy sheaf of paper his way. Give these to the Stark girl. Nathaniel accepted it with some confusion. What ray these? Letters from her father. For her eyes only. Did you open them? Tywin arched a brow. Do you want the answer to that question? He'd become rather adroit and unsealing and resealing letters in his younger days. Such was a useful skill, one he'd been forced to learn in no small part due to the weakness of his own father, often reading his letters and missives without him being any the wiser. It was necessary at the time, if only to prevent Tytos from making even more of a fool of himself. Tytos Lannister had been a good man, but also a weak man. Said weakness nearly led to the downfall of the Lannister name. Now their house was imperiled once more. He would not make the same mistakes. Pushing the remnants of his meal aside, he steepled his fingers aside and laid his chin atop them to regard his heir. For what it's worth, Dorne has also offered us some support, if only to ensure the safe return of Elia and Oberyn to Sunspear. Nathaniel set his own plate aside and tilted his head. They won't reach us in time. No, they will not. Tywin looked to the hearth, considering the flickering fire therein. For a moment he could have sworn he glimpsed something like his own death within the flames. No, this farce against the Greyjoys would not claim his life. The gods could not have him. He refused. His place was here. He was needed. This will not be our last war, but win or lose, this is the one you and I will be remembered for. Our legacy will be determined in the coming months. He made sure to include his son in that, subtly reminding him of his place in all this. The outcome will be passed down to your children, and your children's children. He didn't miss his heir's wince there. It will be your legacy as much as mine, what remains of me when I'm gone. Do you understand? His son nodded. Good. Subtly pleased, he asked another question, another test. Now what do you believe our next move against the Ironborn should be? He half expected the boy to suggest retaking Craycall, perhaps bargaining with the Greyjoys, or even calling upon others for aid. But once again he surprised him. They're coming to us, aren't they? He drummed his fingers against the table, considering. They think we aren't aware of them yet, that they'll be able to take us by surprise. So naturally they'll try to burn our ships at anchor. Tywin let him ponder the matter further, curious as to what he might decide, and whether it would align with his own scheme. He might make the plans, but Nathaniel would be the enforcer to see them done, the fist that carried them out, and the hammer to smite the enemy. He did not relish the idea of letting his heir run amok against the Greyjoys, but perhaps that was needed. If the Kraken insisted upon being a beast, then the lion would remind them of their place. In the sea, not the land. Krakens may be mighty indeed on the open water, but those ever-grasping squids often collapsed under their own weight when they dragged themselves from the depths. After all, the beasts had no bones. Ironborn, like their namesake, were cowards, unable to face an army in a protracted battle. Balon Greyjoy had overstepped, or perhaps Aerys had goaded the oaf into action. It mattered not. The outcome would be the same. This must be answered. Nathaniel thumped a fist down, snapping him back to reality. They mean to trap us, but we'll spring a trap of our own. What did you have in mind? His son and heir explained softly in a low voice and at great length, gesticulating wildly with his hands as he did. When that didn't suffice, he cleared off the table, found a sheaf of parchment, and began sketching out his scheme. It took the better part of 5 minutes for him to fully explain, but once he had, Tywin found himself warming to the idea. For all their strength and savagery, the Ironborn, much like the Targaryens, could be remarkably stupid. Unlike the Mad King, they had no spies, no intelligence network, and only occasionally used scouts. They often relied on hit-and-run tactics, and only ever truly attacked in force when they believed themselves to have an overwhelming advantage against their enemy. Doubtlessly, they still believed they had such against Lannisport. Of course they did. Tywin saw no reason to convince them otherwise. Your plan is acceptable. He granted Nathaniel a nod and watched the young man preen at his praise. The Targaryens may have their fire and blood, but we have our debts. Crakehall shall be repaid tenfold. You do realize this means war, don't you? His son pointed out. A pale blonde brow rose, bemused. Do you think I would be in my position if I'd lost a war? That's not what I meant. This won't stop at Lannisport. We'll have to tear them out, root and stem, or we'll be seen as weak. Tywin barked a rare laugh of his own, bitter and cold. No need for that silver tongue of yours, and here I thought you might try to talk them down. Not this time. His son's face was set in steel. They attacked us first and would have killed Martells if they could. For that they die? On that they agreed wholeheartedly. It would be a race then, to see whom would destroy the Greyjoys first, the Starks, the Lannisters, or perhaps themselves. Tywin was not a gambling man. He made educated guesses and reasonable wagers, putting the safety and security of House Lannister above all. Such was his way. But if he were a betting man, he would say thus. The Greyjoys, and by definition the Ironborn themselves, had a year left to live. Maybe less if Balon did something exceptionally stupid. We do not so. Those were their words, but so they had, and now they would reap the whirlwind. None would survive. Rickard Stark slammed the latest letter down on his desk. Call the banners. His Maester paused. All of them, my lord? Aye, all of them. Nathaniel, Elia cornered him the next morning. Naruto wasn't surprised when she hunted him down like a stag and pinned him to the wall. If anything, he was surprised she hadn't tried it last night. He thanked his lucky stars for that. He'd been so tired after that long talk with Twin. He wouldn't have been able to resist. Nevertheless, the princess was still presently pinning him to nearest wall with her body, eyeing him like a juicy morsel. We are going to have a talk, you and I. Weary though he was, he tilted his head and feigned a smile for her sake. Will I enjoy said talk? She leaned closer, lips brushing his ear. That depends entirely on you, Lannister. Enough. He spun her around, gripped her wrists, slammed her against the wall, and pressed a knee into her pelvis to keep her there. Do you think me a weakling? Ack! She ground herself against him with a gasp, chest heaving as he dug his knee in. Not at all. No, he tilted his head. Because you're acting like it. He wasn't prepared for her laugh, soft, sweet, and smooth as honey. Lannister, she batted her long lashes at him seductively, if I thought you weak, we would not be having this conversation. He pushed harder against her, drawing another gasp. Small wonder the Stark girl wants you. Naruto made to say something more, tried to mention Lyanna, attempted to do so many things, only to pause as the satchel he wore twitched suddenly. Baffled, he cast a glare at it. No, not here, not right now, surely not. Shukaku had always been a bit of a bastard back in the old days, but surely he wasn't that much of a little shit. In defiance of that very thought, the egg within Shukaku twitched furiously, spasmed, really. Elia noticed his confusion, promptly looking down at said satchel with a gasp. Is it about to? Naruto swore, grabbed her hand, and bolted. Kurama creaked a blood-red eye open where he lay in the weirwood tree. He felt it, the stirring of life high above the stone garden. And now it begins. Father didn't much like him. Tyrion was a smart lad. He'd realized this immutable truth by his 10th birthday. He may not have inherited Tywin Lannister's looks, but he had his mind. His thoughts were sharp as a blade and growing sharper every year. He learned quickly, not because he wished to, but because he must. Mother and Cersei often praised him for that. Father, meanwhile, seemed to despise him, loathed his very existence, wished he'd never been born. He seldom smiled in his presence, and when he did it wasn't a kind one. His aunts and uncles weren't much better. At times, it seemed even Uncle Kevin hated him, too. Of course he did. He'd nearly killed his sister-in-law coming into this world. By contrast, Nathaniel was the truest of brothers, and Joanna the best mother a son could ask for, even a dwarf. He was forced to grow quickly in mind, if not necessarily body. He learned, oh yes, he learned. Cersei was technically the eldest of them, despite being twins with Jaime, having been born minutes first, and while he'd never met Jaime himself despite exchanging the odd letter with him, he'd quickly deciphered his place here in the Rock. Despite her technical status as eldest, Cersei would never inherit. Jaime might have once before he became a Kingsguard, which left Nathaniel as the heir, and Tyrion as the reluctant spare. Yes, that left him as something of the odd man out, didn't it? And so he learned. Not that he had much choice in the matter, mind you. In Westeros, it was either learn or die. But now he found himself somewhat adrift. Father either feared or hated him, avoiding him like the plague. Jaime was trapped in King's Landing, unable to do anything more than encourage him from afar. Cersei seemed focused solely on her swordplay, which she'd somehow drawn Mother into. Nathaniel schemed with Lyanna day and night, following Father's command to prepare for the Greyjoys' impending attack, while the Martells. Well, Oberyn and Elia Martell were odd guests, but at least they were kind to him. In the days that followed, he found solace only in his brother's dragon. Kurama didn't care that he may or may not be a dwarf, so long as he brought him food. His life, at least, was simple. Everyone else was complicated insofar as he was concerned. Jaime wanted to be a Kingsguard. Cersei wanted to be strong. Nathaniel, currently, wanted to kill Krakens. But Lyanna wanted Nathaniel, and he was fairly certain Elia did, too, yet sometimes he caught Cersei staring at Nathaniel, and that promised to be an awful mess he wanted no part of. Tyrion had simpler ambitions. As the third son, his future was his own for the most part. He was left to his own devices and did as he pleased. Life would probably remain as such for a time, at least it was until Father found a suitable match for him and tried to barter him off to God's nowhere. Sometimes he wondered who it might be. Selene would be nice, he supposed. Clegan's little sister was kind to him, even if the hound did glare at him from time to time. A sudden commotion had him looking up from the meal he was preparing for the dragon. He had time enough to hear a muffled oath before the door to his room burst open. Nathaniel stumbled in, swearing like a sailor, dragging Elia in behind him. Before he could ask what was going on, his elder sibling ripped something from the satchel he wore and laid it on the bed before him. The sight of it nearly floored Tyrion outright. "Another dragon egg? Wherever did you find that?" The Princess of Sunspear squirmed silently but didn't say a word. Wait, had she? Nathaniel swooped in to save her and flicked his forehead before he could possibly pry. "Secret. You do realize that, if by some miracle it actually hatches, you'll be expected to hand that hatchling over to the king, too." Nathaniel scoffed and began gathering up blankets for reasons he couldn't discern. "Fuck the king." Tyrion snorted despite his anxiety. "Dangerous words. Ares might not like them." "Don't care what he likes." Sweeping up the sheets, he began to cocoon the strange egg, much to his chagrin. "Get over here and help me with this." Reluctantly, he did as he was bade, though it didn't stop his tongue from wagging. "And then what? You'll ride another beast into battle?" Nathaniel looked away with a hum. And so Tyrion returned his attention to the etf. "It looks like a stone to me." He knocked his knuckles against it, frowning at the dull noise it made. "Certainly sounds like one." Elia nudged him aside him and laid fresh sheets to cocoon it. "Ye of little faith, little Lannister." "I have plenty of faith," he scoffed. "Just as I have faith that this is fake." Imagine his surprise when the bloody thing cracked. Elia scoffed at him, bemused. "You were saying?" Odd Nathaniel was hanging back. "But why?" Tyrion tried to reply. Really, he did. He didn't get a chance, because the egg chose that moment to hatch. A tiny clawed limb thrust its way out the side of the shell, bedecked in brown, bearing odd blue markings interposed over its surface. Then came the tail. As in one, singular, not nine like Kurama's. As he looked on in quiet wonder, a clawed foot thrust through the bottom of the egg, which in turn caused it to pitch over onto its back as the poor creature struggled. Tyrion looked to the still Nathaniel, then Elia. "Should we?" "Hush," the Princess of Sunspear shushed him, eyes focused on the egg. "I want to be the first thing this creature sees." Tyrion coughed into a fist, unable to hide his laugh. "I don't think dragons work what way, my lady." Defying that very thought, the shell split apart, revealing the newborn dragon. It was a small winged creature, wet and slick, its eyes a piercing gold, yet dark in the center, its sclera dark as night. Those odd blue markings limned its scales in strange places. Yet for all that, it seemed as fierce and fiery as any of its kin. Much to his amusement, the baby dragon chirped indignantly, craning its slender neck to regard the three of them with a grumpy glare. Naruto barked a laugh as though it had made a joke. "Hello to you too, Shukaku." He had a name for the creature already. How odd. Still, he'd heard stranger. Tyrion stretched forth a tentative hand. "Hello there, little one." Shukaku regarded his offered palm curiously. And then, chomp, the little bastard bit him. Tyrion's yelp echoed through Casterly Rock. A girl did not understand Nathaniel Lannister. Make no mistake, Nymeria wanted to more than anything. But she could not, would not, or rather, she absolutely should not. Perhaps that was for the best. Through understanding came realization, through realization knowledge, and knowledge, as she had learned was often followed pain. Pain brought misery, and misery death. Yes, mayhaps not knowing might be a good thing after all. Ignorance was bliss, as they say. Better for one to go without and not know one's doom than to face the coming storm and know your end was coming. She tried to tell herself that, seeking solace in silence, it helped sometimes in her darker moments. Oftentimes it did not. Lord Tywin's son wasn't just a puzzle, he was an enigma wrapped in confusion, girded by swords, shining like the sun. Approaching him was akin to a moth flying too close to a flame. She knew better, yet the light dazzled her all the same, inexorably drawing closer despite the danger. Inevitably, she would lose herself, go blind and burn. Perhaps she already was burning and simply failed to realize it, and she had no one to blame. But herself. She was his sword, his shadow, his dagger in the dark. When someone needed killing, she killed them when tongues must be silenced. She cut them out when his enemies conspired against him. She removed them. It had been her way for a decade now. Time and again she had removed obstacles in his path, all without him knowing. For ignorance was bliss, and her master was the sun. He need not know of the shadows that sought to dim his holy radiance. A spy in the north writing to the king, dead by her hand. A greedy peasant who wished to steal the dragons and sell them for profit, slain without a second thought. Vengeful enemies from both Bravos and the House of Black and White, quietly killed until they stopped coming altogether. She had slain dozens in Nathaniel's name, fought silent wars one by one, plucking the pesky pebbles from his path, clearing away the thorns that would otherwise impede him, leaving her lord none the wiser. Sometimes she hunted down the ones responsible for those thorns, and gave them a rather thorny death themselves, further dissuading others who might wish Lord Nathaniel harm. The Mad King had been responsible for most of his troubles, and she could not kill him. Well, she could, but not without plunging Westeros into chaos. Yet she could kill others, and had done so gladly. Her daggers had taken more lives than she had faces, and she had a great many faces now indeed, so many. Her hands were dyed red with blood. They would never be clean. She did not wish them to be. Her very soul was sullied. And that was fine. Nymeria knew well the sight of treachery and how to snuff it out. But what she did not know was how to defend against her own thoughts. They remained her own. Yet even now she found herself doubting them, unable to trust in herself. She was his sword. He was the fist that held her, commanded her, directed her ever onward and forward. To even hope for anything more was foolish. And she had been content. Mostly. Watching other women pine over him, seeing love blossom between him and Lyanna Stark, she'd felt the prickle of jealousy and turned her face from it. Then done so again when he inadvertently caught the attention of other women through his kind words and grand heroics. Now the wolf and the viper and another lion pined for him, as did the dragon. All the while, she silently stewed. The hound knew her feelings on the matter, or suspected, and she'd sworn to cut out his tongue should he ever speak of it to anyone. He had not. Good. She rather liked Clegging. He understood her. It would have been a shame to kill him. But he wasn't the one to speak it. The women had, and in saying so, introduced the foul, niggling worm of doubt into her mind. It was better when she was his weapon. She craved the cold certainty of steel, knowing she could never be anything more. Her past did not matter. She did not matter. Now she was afraid. Fear was the enemy. Fear leads to anger, child. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. A strange little old man with green skin told her such once, back in Bravos when she had just begun her career as no one. She hadn't understood his wisdom at the time, but his words had stuck with her long after their meeting in the market, until one day she did understand them. Nymeria dearly wished she hadn't. She never thought she would long for the old days, when she was but a tool in the House of Black and White, cold and unthinking, when she did not falter, when she did not question. Because after all these years, she'd learned what suffering led to. Quite simply put, suffering lead to death. Of the body, of the self, of the soul, such was the choice before her. She could choose to live, or she could choose to die. One was infinitely more painful than the other. One led to escape, the other an end to service. There could be no third path, none that she could see at any rate. She had to make her choice tonight, or it would be made for her. A girl, no, not just a girl. My name is Nymeria, did not wish to fear Nathaniel, nor hate him, and she certainly couldn't bring herself to try and kill him again. She may be brave, but not that brave. Frankly, a girl didn't think anything could end him nowadays. He'd grown far too powerful. Perhaps he'd always been such, and simply pretended for the sake of others. That sounded like something he would do. No, she only wished to serve him and repay his faith with loyalty, to serve faithfully and find silent solace in service. But now even that had been being taken from her. Everything was slipping away. It wasn't fair. Had she been noble-born instead of a wretched Blackfair, she would be a Targaryen. Fire and blood, royalty. A proper princess with riches, power, ladies in waiting, all the trappings she lacked in this life. She could have demanded her father, whomever it was, make a proper match with Nathaniel, and probably would have gotten her way, in all honesty. They could have settled down together and raised beautiful children with bright eyes and pale hair. But she was not that princess. She was just a girl. She was no one. Nobody. A lion could lay with a wolf or a viper, a true dragon, or even another lion, but not no one, no matter how much a girl might secretly wish otherwise. She could not give him anything. From the moment she'd been born, her only lot in life was death. She was only capable of killing, with perhaps the odd bout of kindness. And then those girls ruined everything by saying the one thing they shouldn't. She had panicked, run, fled, sought to avoid him for a time, hoping the pain would go away. Yet hiding him served no one, and it only worsened the wound in her heart. She understood that now. She just needed to make him understand. So she had waited until night fell, then slipped inside his quarters. From there it had been a simple matter to rouse him to action, then lead him outside. Out his room they went, into the hall past the battlements, down into the depths of Casterly Rock Castle, into then through the stone garden, where the dragons dwelt. They did not stir when she led him outside, nor did they emerge when she ushered him out onto the beachhead near the cliffs, where none could see them. Still, that was not enough. For the better part of an hour they walked, until the castle was merely a sizable speck in the distance. The tide was coming in, water lapping at their feet, but she paid it little heed. Nathaniel hadn't questioned her, not once. She didn't deserve his trust. Even the moon had hidden her face tonight, such was her shame. She lurked behind a heavy bank of clouds, leaving barely enough light to see by. Nymeria found a certain irony in that. Oh yes, the night was dark and full of terrors. Tonight those terrors were her own, large and looming. "This is far enough, I think." She had said just now, not a girl. It was important to make the distinction between her wants and needs, however base they might be. Pivoting upon one, she turned to face him and bowed, low and deep at the waist, until she was staring down at the damp sand. "Thank you." She couldn't see Nathaniel's face at this angle, but she could practically hear his brow furrow in confusion. "For what?" Nymeria dare not raise her gaze for fear of what he might find there. "For taking me into your service." He laughed a little. "You didn't have to bring me all the way out here for that. Let me finish." Her head snapped up and she snarled at him, the first time she had ever done so. The startled look in his eyes made her feel wretched. "You are my world, my king, my emperor, my god, for all that you disdain such." A brief beat of panic seized her, causing her to take a quick breath and barrel onward before her nerve faltered or worse, gave him a chance to speak. "You are the one who stayed your hand, who granted me a second chance I did not deserve, and 10 years of happiness. For that, you have my eternal gratitude." His face smoothed out, blanking at her words. "This is starting to sound like a goodbye?" She supposed it was in a sense. One way or another, something ended tonight. "Are you leaving?" The question hurt. She'd thought herself prepared for it, and still it felt like she'd been stabbed. Shoving the hurt down into her heart, she smiled sadly. "Do you want me to my lord?" He scowled, utterly appalled. "Of course not." That was good, wasn't it? Anger meant he liked her, valued her, wanted her by his side. Yet when he took a step forward, she found herself stepping back like some frightened child. Because at the end of the day, she was afraid. Of what could be, what might be. Nathaniel saw it too, damn him. He'd always been able to read her like a book. He held out a hand to her. "What do you want from me here, Nymeria?" Someone was laughing. Had they been followed? Who dared? Oh, it was her, wasn't it? She was the one laughing. This was bad. She'd overestimated her self-control. "Want?" She made an ugly noise torn somewhere between a strangled sob and a savage snarl. "You know what it is a girl wants, what I want. But you dare not speak it." She wanted his hands on her, inside her, cupping her breasts, caressing her nipples, her hips on his as she slammed herself down onto him again and again. She wanted to ride him into the sand, hollering his name for all to hear as the very stars burned out and the dragons danced around them. She wanted to carry his child, hold the babe to her breast and rejoice in being a mother, as none had ever been to her. But it and they could never be. It was abhorrent to want what she wanted, to crave more of her lord when he had already given her so much. She may as well ask the sun to rise in the west and set in the east, demand the seas go dry, and order every mountain to blow away in the wind like leaves. He had other loves, and her place could never be among them. She was nothing. No one, nobody, she shouldn't even exist. Worse, she was damaged, broken, probably insane too. And the worst part was that she knew it. She didn't even think she could bear him children. And what if she could? What would become of any offspring of theirs? What happened when Nathaniel became king? There it was. The terrifying reality that was likely to come, one that not even Tywin Lannister himself dared broach with his son directly. Ah, but a girl was clever. She might not know nobility or how to curtsy or drink tea properly, but she could read a room. Likewise could read between the lines, see likely outcomes, and the future that was most likely to arrive. First and foremost, Ares would die. It was no longer a matter of it, but when, be it by fate, war, or through his own madness, he wouldn't live to see the next decade. Rhaegar would not be allowed to inherit, he couldn't. If only because it would be more of the same and Lord Tywin would not tolerate the Mad King's son on the throne. So he too would die. Maybe it would be poison, maybe he would fall in battle, maybe she would be sent to kill him. Regardless, his death was certain. The younger son. What was his name? Viserys. Children died all the time in the Red Keep, didn't they? It would be easy. The queen would likely be allowed to live. She was quite fond of Nathaniel and he her. All future Targaryens would pass through her after all. Or rather, her legs. It would be so effortless to bind the Lannisters to her and her to them. From there, Nymeria's notion of the future grew mudded. She didn't know what would happen once the male Targaryens were wiped away, not for certain. But she had an inkling. No, she would not speak it. She would not give voice to what may or may not be. Misery, misery, misery. That was what she would choose tonight, if only because misery was safe. She understood sadness and sorrow, and while they would not make her happy, they were better than an uncertain future. Love might not be a weakness, but hope most assuredly was. Hope was the deadliest dagger of all, and her lord was still silent. So be it. I ask that you treat me only as a girl. She forced herself to meet his gaze, bringing her voice back to a low monotone. A weapon, a tool, a girl cannot be anything more. It hurt to say that, hurt to lie, but anything was better than the pain she feared. A girl is no one, a girl is nothing, and if you cannot agree to that, Nathaniel held his tongue. All the while he said not a word, he just stared at her. She felt so wretchedly small beneath his glowing gaze as though she barely came up to his waist. Why wouldn't he speak? Was she so unworthy of his words? Were her words truly so disappointing to him? Aggravated, she drew the dagger at her hip and knelt. From there, she offered it up to him with both hands, head bowed, uncaring as the waves lapped at her legs. If you cannot accept this, then a girl asks that you kill her here and now. Neither of them made a sound. The world was silent, save for the waves lapping incessantly upon the shore. Nymeria didn't dare move, didn't dare raise her head, scarcely dared to breathe, such was her fear. Did his silence imply understanding? Could they go back, make things as they were before, no feelings, no emotions, no complicated matters? When she simply did as she was told and never dared to hope for more, or was she to die here? Two paths stretched before, and she found herself not liking either. But what choice did she have? Nathaniel could never love her. He would be a fool to do so, and he was no fool. She heard him stride forward suddenly, boots tromping near silently in the wet sand, felt him pluck the long dagger from her grasp, saw the low light catch the silvery steel and make it shine in the low light. He considered her for a long moment, gauging her, testing her, ready to call her bluff if indeed there was one. When it became clear there wasn't one, didn't move, he did. He knelt and set the steel to her throat. Beheading, then. He was strong enough to deliver such a death. It would be a clean one at least. Nymeria closed her eyes, exhaled a soft goodbye, and waited for oblivion. Let it be quick. Why wasn't it quick? Any moment now she expected to feel the cold sting of steel, followed by sweet oblivion. She longed for it. Craved it, release. No more pain, no more fear, no more uncertainty. She needed it, didn't she? Then why did she feel so relieved that it hadn't come yet? The flat of the knife tapped the side of her neck. Once, twice, thrice now, tracing her jugular. At length Nathaniel finally spoke. I hate people that lie to themselves. You of all people should know that. Despite her best efforts to rein herself in, a tiny tremble betrayed her body. I'm not lying. I wish to die. Please release me. Are you sure about that? He spun the knife around, braved its hilt with both hands, and pressed the blade to his own throat, causing her eyes to bulge. How about now? She gasped. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? He stared back at her with a small smile. I don't want to live in a world without you, and since you're clearly keen on dying, you won't mind if I go ahead of you first. Panic. Raw animal instinct seized Nymeria's body from head to toe, and she acted without thinking, all but lunging forward with a pained cry to bat the blade from Nathaniel's hands. He couldn't die. He absolutely must not die. She practically tackled him to the sand in her haste to save him from himself, determined to wrestle the weapon from his grasp. Imagine her surprise, then, when he let her do just that. She successfully struck the knife out his hands in a single slap, It flew through the air and plonked down into the water, where it was swallowed by the tides. She didn't even have a chance to retrieve it. Even as she tried to rise, an arm clamped down around her waist, holding her fast. Her eyes bulged, but it was too late. A quick tumble in the surf, and she found herself pinned beneath him, trapped. Nymeria went still, keenly aware of not just how close he was, but that she'd been deceived. "Well, would you look at that?" Golden eyes gleamed down at her. "You have something to live for after all." She growled up at him and tried to muster some semblance of anger. All that emerged was a sob. "Why couldn't you just kill me? Everything would be better if you just let me go." "Because," he helped her up and thumbed a bit of sand from her cheek, "you'd regret it." Could she regret something if she was dead? She didn't know, it frightened her. She'd always been afraid, hadn't she? "You need to stop doing that." He flicked her forehead, drawing a wince from her. "Perseverating about things that may or may not happen won't help you, you know." She tucked her chin into her chest and refused to look at him. "What do you want from me, my lord?" "That depends entirely on you." He sat down before her. "What do you want?" Nymeria already knew the answer before he finished speaking. Here at last she looked at him. "I think I want to live." He placed a hand to his ear. "Didn't quite catch that?" Damn him for making her saying it. "I want to live." A smile split his face. "You'll have to be louder." She glared at him furiously. "I want to live." He leaned back. "I can't hear you," she hollered. "I want to live." "Good, good." Nathaniel beamed like the boy he no longer was, unable to hide the little flutter of pride he must have felt just then as shouted at him. Rather than rebuke her, he took a hold of her hands and stood, pulling her up to her feet alongside him. "Don't you feel so much better now?" She did, remarkably. It didn't solve everything, but she felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. And yet one thing was left unresolved. Nymeria eyed Nathaniel like the half-dragon she truly was at heart, ready to bite and not at all liking the trick he'd played upon her. Yet for all that, he made no untoward moves against her. Part of her wished he would, if only so she could finally have an answer. He was so incredibly close. Her hands had yet to leave his, and they were so very warm. Her face flushed. This would be foolish. She couldn't bear him any children. She had nothing to offer him, no dowry, no riches, no rewards, only herself. She knew nothing of the softer things in life. If by chance they did have children in the distant future, she could only teach them what she knew. How to defend themselves, fight, and kill. Was that enough? Could it be? Maybe. His fingers threaded through hers. "Tell me what's wrong." She gripped his hands tighter. Nothing was wrong. Everything was wrong. She didn't know what to do. Lyanna made romance look so easy, downright effortless even. Yet here she was, frozen, wholly at a disadvantage, out of her depth. For her, stabbing was usually her modus operandi, her go-to method of extricating herself from any unpleasant predicaments in which she found herself. Somehow she didn't think stabbing Nathaniel would get her out of this. Well, maybe it would, but she didn't want to hurt him. She wanted. Her feet carried her closer to him. Remarkably, he didn't retreat, but edged closer as well. She shook her head at a loss. "You can't be with me, I'm no one, nothing," he scoffed, unafraid. "You're someone to me." A bitter laugh leaped from her lips. "That sounds horrible. Did you make that up yourself?" "Not at all," he hummed a little, the sound warming her bones. "You've been with me the longest, remember?" She had, hadn't she? The realization rattled her. As far as she knew, he communicated with the Queen through letters, but never face to face. He'd only met Elia briefly, and she'd departed soon thereafter. He and Cersei hadn't been on good terms when he'd first left Casterly Rock. Lyanna had come afterward, but she had sworn herself to his service him almost from the first. When they'd both been little more than children. 10 years of loyal service, 10 years of doubt, 10 years of longing. "I really couldn't have done any of this without you, you know." Acknowledgement, recognition, vindication. Nymeria squirmed happily beneath his praise, unable to find the right words to say. She tried, her lips parted, closed. Parted again, but no sound emerged. Salvation, how sweet it was. Nathaniel squeezed her hands instead, spurring her on. "Talk to me, tell me what you want." As if he didn't already know what she wanted. What she desired. What she craved more than anything. She scooted closer and looked at him, nose brushing his as her eyes flitted up to his lips. "I want to do something foolish." Judging by his expression, he had a good idea of what that foolishness was. "Then what's stopping you?" He made a fair point. What was stopping her? Herself, common decency, nothing at all. Hadn't she given enough, sacrificed enough, been enough? "It's all right." He laid a hand on her cheek, dimpling in a small smile. "To be honest, I'm out of my depth here too." A pitiful flicker of hope fluttered in her heart like a candle in the same. "Then you feel the same?" "I'm not sure." At least he was honest with her. "But I'm willing to see where this goes." She squirmed anew under his gaze. "I may not be able to give you children. That's fine." He held up their interlocked hands and kissed them. "And if we have any," he paused, realizing she was quite serious, "then we'll raise them properly," he added at her stunned look. "We'll make 'em strong, too, just as strong as any other kids I might have. How does that sound? Raise them, just like that. They wouldn't be treated as bastards nor set aside. Her greatest concern, a hurdle most fearsome for the future, and it wasn't even one at all. Talk about making mountains out of molehills. Had she truly been afraid for nothing, perhaps sensing her concern, he pressed his tanned forehead to hers. "I'll be there for you, whatever comes our way." What was she to say to that? What could she say? The assassin struggled against herself a moment more, and fell. "I don't deserve this," he chuckled. "Of course you do. Everyone deserves happiness." With that, the last tenuous thread of Nymeria's self-control snapped. To the hells with it. Words had failed her, so she let her lips do the talking. She stood on the tips of her toes and leaned the rest of the way in to kiss Nathaniel. Softly at first, testing the waters, probing. Then fiercely when it became clear he had no intention of running away. She all but bit his lip in her haste to get at him, no longer caring if she made a fool of herself for it. So be it. She no longer cared what they called her. Tilting her head for a better angle, she drank him in deep and felt her blood warm as her body tingled with excitement. His arms briefly settled on either side of her hips to hold himself fast, but she ruined that by kissing him again and again and again, scarcely pausing to breathe. Her heart was beating so blasted fast, her every thought, cared, and regret stripped away in this moment. Was this what she'd been missing out on, all this time? Tiwa's not fair. Her lord didn't run away. When her lips sought his for a third time, he chased them with his own, preventing her from pulling away, not that she would have. One arm dripped lower, curling possessively around her waist to hold her close, heedless of her damp clothes from the surf. Her hands reached up to tangle in his damp hair, a smile gracing her lips as he reached down with one hand to cup her cheek. The other found her flank and lifted her left leg to stroke her inner thigh through her breeches. That tore her tenuous control to pieces. Too many clothes, too damp, too cold. In conclusion, off. It was there that things truly grew heated between them. Her hands fisted in his tunic and found the buttons there, opening it quickly as he fiddled with the laces holding her own shirt garments in place. She laughed when he failed to untie them properly and instead leaned close to nuzzle his neck, lavishing a series of long, lasting kisses upon his throat until he finally succeeded. From there, clothes flew in every direction, scattered about the sands. It was frenzy, it was madness, it was glorious. Let chaos take the world. She kicked off a shoe. He lost a glove. From there, they made a crude blanket of their clothes and capes and laid atop them. In hindsight, Nymeria wasn't sure who got whose shirt off first, only that at some point she could feel the salt air tickling the skin of her bare breasts, his fingers running down her exposed back as he lifted her into his lap, the better to usher her on to new heights of carnal glory. Two could play that game. She dug her nails into his shoulders, and he retaliated in kind. One hand pinched her rear to distract her even as the other delved between her thighs, gently parting her legs. From there he began kissing her stomach, then lower still. By the time she realized what he intended, it was too late, and he had her gasping in pleasant surprise. "Oh, that felt very nice." Wait, that was a Bravosi technique. Where had he learned to do that? Vengeance would soon be hers. She had his trousers off almost immediately thereafter, and there was no escape. She planted herself atop him and ground down, reveling in the pleasure of it all, the grunt drawn from him before she dove down and kissed him again. No words were said on their part, nor needed. They were, the both of them, certain what they wanted, and none could have stopped them. Nymeria would have taken the hand of any who dared try, and their head besides. This felt good. No, better than good, it was bliss. How had she gone without this? She wanted to experience it every day. She wanted him. He wanted her. The outcome was simply inevitable. Sitting up atop his lap, she bared herself to him, but not fully, trying to hide her scars in the dark. There were so many after all, yet he wasn't having it. Nathaniel Naruto kissed each one of them, 3 by her bosom, 1 just shy of her heart, another near her ribs, and a 6th at her neck. She had more still on her legs from narrow escapes when she was much younger. Each were of the wounds she'd taken since she first took up her daggers, of injuries gained both in Westeros and Bravos alike. Each were blessed by his lips. He lavished attention upon her full breasts, nuzzled her neck, devoting himself to each and every one of her old wounds until she was gasping and mewling in his lap, begging for mercy. Her lord granted it to her almost reluctantly, turning his attention to her scarred facade, followed by her mouth. He muttered something between those kisses, speaking in a language she didn't understand. His fingers brushed her marred visage. She felt a strange tingle in her face then, just over her old wound. The words were older than High Valyrian, ancient even, and for a moment she could have sworn his palms actually glowed gold. Whatever he'd done, whatever was doing, she had no mirror by which to see. In the end, she didn't dwell on it, she'd see come morning. For now she had concerns of a more carnal variety. Lyanna and Cersei and Elia and that bloody dragon queen may well take pieces from him in the future, but she would be first. His unforgettable first. Whether the realm learned of her or not, she didn't care. In fact, she was quite content to fade into obscurity, so long as she had him. Her hands cupped her lord's face, and she kissed him deeply as they coupled, letting his fingers tangle in her pale hair. Nuzzling her forehead with her own, she rubbed her face against his, gasping but a little as his hands settled upon her flank and urged her on, quickening her pace atop him. She tilted her head back, arched her neck, and pushed him back down to the sands. Reveling in his stunned expression, she swayed atop him as she'd once seen the dancers of Bravos do, breasts bouncing as she ground herself against him. Each movement was made in sensual slowness, drawing out every moment for her own enjoyment and his pleasure. To the hells with the rest. She wanted this. She needed this. She'd stood by idly for so long, suffering in silence while everyone else got what they wanted. No more. She was a girl no longer. She was a woman. She was Nymeria. Nathaniel bucked against her, and suddenly it was she who found herself pinned, pressed atop their scattered clothes into the sand. If she'd thought their earlier positions were grand, then this was even better. She locked her legs around his waist and arched her back, urging him on. Sweet, glorious release. In hindsight, Naruto shouldn't known it was too much to hope the ladies wouldn't have a catfight. Thankfully, he wasn't present to witness the chaos that followed the next morning. Alas, it began as most things often do, with a careless remark. So you are to wed Nathaniel, then? Lyanna lowered her blunted blade and lifted her chin, bridling just a little at the sudden inquiry. In an instant, she became keenly aware of Cersei's green gaze piercing her from across the room. She wasn't the one to make that inquiry, however, nor had the hapless straw man she'd been wailing on. No, the question came from Elia Martell. She didn't think the Dornish woman meant anything untoward by what she'd said just now, but it was so hard to tell sometimes. Even the most innocuous remarks often held a hidden edge beneath the satin. Even now she couldn't quite quantify the meaning behind her words, as though she were testing, probing her, gauging her for any sign of weakness. Well, she would give her none. I am, she said instead. Our fathers made a match between us. He is to be my betrothed. What of it? HMHMM. The Princess of Dorne hummed once, reached down, took up a practice weapon, a short sword, of her own and waded into the ring after her. And you love him, I trust? LL love. Her face flushed to the very roots of her hair, causing Cersei to tut in mild amusement at her plight. Sister. Oberyn saw it and blew out a sigh as he prepared his own spear to face the Lannister girl in mock combat. Do not torment the poor girl. Elia clicked her tongue at him and adopted a loose stance, smooth and shifting as the sands of her homeland. I am not tormenting her, brother. I simply wish to satisfy my curiosity. By embarrassing her? Cersei saw an opening and used it to land the first strike against him, sweeping low to make the princeling hop backwards. The moment his feet touched the ground, she went on the attack, putting him on the back foot in a whirl of strikes that, while not necessarily graceful, more than made up for it in ferocity. Tyrion applauded happily on the sidelines. Well fought, sister. Lyanna watched them warily, fearing she might one day pursue Nathaniel with the same intensity. In all honesty, did not know how to feel about that. Such love between kin was technically taboo, yet had the Targaryens not wed brother and sister together for centuries. It seemed a slippery slope, made all the more treacherous by Cersei's implicit offer of help in the bedroom. Why, just thinking of it made her burn. Surely the art of lovemaking couldn't be that, but this was Nathaniel's sister. I asked you a question, girl. Right, she'd forgotten about the Martell. Annoyed, she used the reprieve to rally and glare Elia's way. Of course I love Nathaniel. I wouldn't wed him otherwise. Are you sure about that? Swift as a serpent, she flicked the blade her way, forcing her a hasty parry. Love and lust are two very different things. One lasts, the other does not. A scowl writ itself across her face, a thrust leading into an overhand swing that was in turn nimbly dodged. And what do you know of love? More than you can possibly know, Stark. Elia circled round and slapped her vulnerable flank with the flat of her blunted blade in passing, drawing an indignant squawk from Lyanna in return. Perhaps if you paid attention you would learn. Indignant, she sputtered at her. "I've learned a great many things. In Winterfell, perhaps, but not of the future, not where it matters." Elia granted her a small, sad smile, suddenly seeming decades older than she truly was. "You think that chivalry and honor and nobility will save you from what is to come, but they will not. You know nothing, Lyanna Stark, love least of all." Her right eye twitched, and not for the reasons one might expect. "Silence!" The princess backed away, crooking one finger after herself. "I'm afraid you'll have to make me thus." Lunging forwards, Lyanna braved her blade with both hands and barged into Elia's guard, ignoring the riposte that rattled her ribs to smack away her weapon. This time, Oberyn's sister wasn't quite quick enough to get out of the way. Howling her triumph, Lyanna landed a powerful blow against the smug girl's shoulder and sent her staggering. Blazing with triumph, she drove a boot forward into the girl's bosom to kick her to the training room floor. A distant shout informed her that Oberyn had landed a similar strike on Cersei via sweeping her legs, leaving her sprawled on the flagstones. "Better," Elia climbed to her feet, dusted herself off, and knelt to retrieve her sword once more. "There may be some fight in you yet." Lyanna growled and waded in, sword swinging. Alas, the Martell girl had learned from her mistake and was no longer easy prey. She might well be stronger than her, but the girl was older and faster. She swayed away from each sweep, gladly giving ground one step at a time, yet careful to never let herself be backed into a corner. The result was something of a circular chase that rather left her feeling like a fool, unable to reach her. Round and round they went, with Elia ever out of reach, a cycle without end. Until it didn't. Quick as can be, Elia stopped evading and danced into her defenses, stomping down at her foot before striking with startling speed. Lyanna didn't recognize the style, yet handily blocked the first lung, slightly less so the second, and when the third swooped in at her legs as Oberyn had done for Cersei, she immediately made to block her lower torso, only to find herself blocking only empty air. A feint, Elia swept up under her chin before she could recover. "Yield, you are beaten, it is useless to resist." Lyanna desperately wanted to. More than anything, she longed to fight on, win, prove herself. But she couldn't. Infuriated, she cast her sword down to the ground, the steel creating a harsh clatter as it met the stone. Across the makeshift arena, she dimly saw Oberyn helping a sullen Cersei to her feet. There was a small tear in her right sleeve that wept blood, and Tyrion was already toddling over with a fresh roll of linen to wrap it. Seemed she hadn't fared much better than her, at least. But for some reason, Elia still hadn't moved the sword from her throat. "I will ask you again, do you love Nathaniel Lannister? Will you be true to him? Are prepared to defend him against the wars and horrors to come?" Lyanna thumped a fist to her bosom and inclined her head curtly. "I do, I will, and I shall." Elia scrutinized her for a long moment. Only then did she lower her blade. "We shall see, Stark." Nathaniel would have had something to say about her tone just now, but Nathaniel wasn't here to defend himself now, was he? He'd wandered off to do God's knew what last night and hadn't returned. Lord Tywin didn't seem too concerned. Her betrothed was likely looking for Nymeria or some such, and hopefully to knock some sense into her. Thick as thieves, those two. She hoped he could talk some sense into her. It would be a shame to lose such a loyal friend. Why all these questions? It had something to do with that heart tree in the stone garden, didn't it? She must have seen something, she just knew it. They had one just like it back in Winterfell, but older, healthier. Yet for all that, it had never once spoken to her, but here Elia was talking of multiple wars that hadn't even begun just yet. And what horrors. Surely she wasn't talking of them. They'd been gone for ages. Aha, she finally understood. Elia cared deeply for Naruto, perhaps almost as much as she did. That much she could respect, even if she secretly wanted him all to herself. Alas, that seemed less and less likely by the day. They were going to have a long talk about this, he and her. It was going to be loud. Whether that was an angry loud or a more satisfactory one would be entirely up to him. Now then, another question. Here at last, Elia's smile turned sly. "Do you know how to please a man in bed?" "She does not," Cersei sang from across the room, wearing the biggest smile. "It's quite the problem," Elia huffed. "Quiet, Lannister. I'll deal with you and your nonsense later." Nathaniel's sister smiled on, undaunted. Lyanna scarcely heard either of them, because her mind fizzled right out. Why was everyone asking her that question? They'd come close, yes, but they'd not yet done. That together, though she knew such would be expected, as husband and wife. She was rather looking forward to it, in all honesty. Now if only everyone would stop teasing her about it. There, Elia tutted as an older sister might, taking her by the hand. "Do not fret. We are taught such things in Dorne. I can teach you." She could. Lyanna squinted at her, not trusting her quiet yet. And what would the price for such assistance be? A modest sum? She didn't think it would be modest at all, and it was not. You can be his wife all you like, Elia said, all smiles. I'd much rather be his mistress. Tyrion balked. Cersei's jaw clicked open. Lyanna choked on her own spit. Oberyn clapped a hand to his forehead. Dear sister, why are you like this? I am rather fond of our lion, as you well know. Still wearing said smile, the Princess of Dorne took a hold of Lyanna's free hand, preventing her from squirming away or worse, lashing out. I was fortunate enough to meet him before you did, but I can hardly claim to have done anything with him. We merely held hands while we walked and talked for a time. Had she been a dragon, Lyanna would have spat sparks. What? Held hands before she had? That scandalous harlot. It was even worse than she feared then. Another challenger approached. She wanted to thump her over the head and leave her for dead. But no. Nathaniel would never forgive her if Elia had an accident in Casterly Rock. Worse, it would make the Lannisters seem untrustworthy and make an enemy of Dorne. She knew better. She did. Really, must not kill. Oh dear, Elia giggled with saccharine sweetness. You seem rather cross. Perhaps I touched a nerve. Keep your lessons. Lyanna forced the words out through grit teeth. I'll bed and wed him myself. Elia tilted her head. Are you sure? That sounds rather unwise if you ask me. She didn't want to woo him with another woman's methods. She wanted him to love her for, well, her. Even if his heart could never truly belong to her and her alone, fractured as he was, she was damn well determined to hold the largest piece of it. I said no, Cersei sidled up to her with a smile, sensing a challenge. May the best woman win then? Lyanna scowled her way. Why are you even involved in this? Because I have his best interests at heart. As do you, her face flushed. You cannot be serious. A shrug was her sole reward. I concur. Elia clapped her hands and inclined her head in delighted agreement. We all want what's best for him, do we not? On that they were of one mind. They only disagreed on what they thought the best should be. Lyanna bridled, rightfully incensed. Fine, then, she would show them both, and every other challenger besides. This meant war.